All right. Today we have a really, really awesome guest, Daniel Rosen, CEO of Renovo Financial. This guy is an absolute monster and honestly probably one of the best DSCR lenders in the country. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. It's a pleasure to be here. Super excited.
Welcome to Deals and Dollars. First time we've had a real lender on the show, right? Someone that's just crushing.
Yeah, I don't think we've had somebody,
loans, right? I mean, we've talked to brokers, we've talked to tons of investors, but I personally love the finance side of things, and I think as you're getting into real estate, understanding finance is probably the most important thing that you can know.
Yeah, just business in general. If you don't know your numbers, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall hoping something sticks, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, Daniel, just to give everyone a quick background, Daniel is an absolute he's doing $2 billion of loan originations a year. Truly exponential growth for his company. I mean, it definitely wasn't overnight success, but it's been a long time coming, and you're crushing it, man. Just to give the guests a little background, can you just kind of tell your startup story?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the startup story comes from the ashes of 2008. So wow. I might not look it, but I am old enough to be pre-08. Pre-08 is I don't know, what is that like?
I feel like that's a badge on you.
Yeah, a little badge.
It is.
But I was
made
young,
it through.
so thankfully I was only 26 when all that went down. So I got to learn almost what not to do at a really young age, and still have a lot of energy to make a comeback. But I worked 2005 to 2008. At 22 years old, became a loan officer. So
nice.
At 22, got in the business, learned the money side. Learned how to sell, picked up my BlackBerry and the Yellow Pages and started hitting the phones, right? I mean, in business, that's the first thing you got to do is hit the phone. So I happened to be pretty successful at growing a loan origination business at a company called Smith Rothschild, which was ran by Kevin Werner, who's my business partner now, and our CEO of Renovo. And unfortunately, 2008 was just a wreck. I mean, it was ugly. So, but, it's kind of like taking apart a computer. Might be how you learn how a computer's put together and how the thing works. I'm not tech savvy. I have no idea how computers work. But when stuff went down in 2008 and the market started coming down, that's really, I stayed on with Kevin at Smith Rothschild and really helped unwind, $100 million plus of loans.
Wow.
So, it was one thing to learn how to sell and learn how to make loans at a time where it was probably relatively easy to make them. But to learn how to unwind and get out of loans and the legal that goes behind it, and how do you get out of an asset that, you made a $300,000 loan on that's now trading for $40,000. How does that all go down?
Wow.
But the unique thing about Kevin at the time, I think, many people would have said, turn over the keys, go BK, let the business go, move on. We were at the stage in our life where, he was like, we got to stay in this and we got to unwind it to the end, because we got to get the learning.
Wow.
We got to learn what to do next time around. So I think in his head, he was always going to do this again. It was always going to be in a much more institutional way and build it to last. You can, in the loan business, you can never go out. You got to build it to last and not die. So it took several years. So we really didn't make a new loan until 2011. So we had a short break. In between, I left Smith Rothschild in about the end of 2009 and started rehabbing houses. So I got the opportunity to rehab 30, 40 houses and know what it's like to deal with contractors and be on that side. And I knew contractors were always looking at me like, this kid has no idea what he's doing. So, they would tell me what things cost, and I'm like, they definitely know I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to take him at his word and pay him. But learned a ton through doing that, right? So being on the other side of the business, I think gave me a real perspective of what a client goes through. and what they're looking for and what's important about the capital, going through it. So happened to have some clients calling me from Smith Rothschild days for money. This is where it gets worse. Started lending some of my own money. But you're worried already.
Yeah. I started sweating. My nose is already.
And truth be told, I did not do it well. So you would have thought like I had learned what to do, but I think because things were so rough, and I had some people offer me some pretty good terms, but I ended up in one really bad deal with all of my own money in it, and that's how I actually reached out to Kevin and asked for his help. Being the guy he is, he sat down, he helped me work through that deal. One thing led to another. We started doing real estate deals together, and one day he looked at me and said, "I'm starting another lending business, and you should deal with me."
That's
so
awesome.
that was like 2011 when anyone thought you were nuts to go lend money to real estate investors.
Wow.
So were you always working with investors? I mean, you were originating loans, was it?
Yeah,
Always investor loans.
always investor loans.
Wow. So that's interesting. I mean, I don't feel like when you first start out, you're gonna I'm gonna do loans. I feel like the first thing is like, all right, I'm gonna get a license and do mortgages, right? So how did you end up in the investment side of things?
I went to school in the program I was in was for real estate finance. So University of Wisconsin, real estate finance, one of the best, most prestigious,
Number one.
It is number one.
business school for real estate investment, right? So you're destined for commercial real estate, CBRE, and of course, I went to work for a hard money lender. Like, why? Right? So I happened to work at my brother's restaurant, who's 7 years older than me, and Kevin's brother at the time, this is where I learned about recruiting. You're always recruiting. I didn't realize he was befriending me, but really also recruiting me. So by serving him hot dogs and hamburgers for 5 years of my life through college, he said, "Why don't you jump in the car with me and come drive around the city and see what we're lending on?" And I fell in love like that day. Like, I always wanted to own a six flat. I would hear my dad talk about six flats, and he would drive me around, and he was a dentist, so of course he's the one you want to get money from, right? To invest.
Yeah.
So he would say, "I just invested in that deal." But when I saw what they were lending on, that's like, I felt just like a tie to it. Like, I could do that. I could put my hands on it. Maybe I could buy them one day. And so instead of going into the commercial world, or where most people out of University of Wisconsin were going, I went to a small private money lending shop.
Interesting.
And they became my first mentor. So they taught me the business. They taught me how to sell, how to manage a team. That's how it went down.
It's like you like anybody can drive a car, but you're driving the car, you're doing sales, and then the car breaks down.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, I'm gonna get in here and now like fix the engine with no knowledge about how to fix the engine. That's
pretty much. Best thing that ever happened to me, though, because like at 25 years old, when you're becoming one of the number one LOs in a company, you could use a little dose of reality.
Yeah.
Like
humble pie.
Yeah, because if it kept going, I probably wouldn't have realized that, shit can get bad. So I got to learn that at like a pretty young age. I'm still not over it. Like I'm always assuming there's something coming.
Right.
What were your biggest? Well, first off, I'm just out of personal curiosity. What were the debt terms like pre-crisis for Hart? Like
Beautiful. 10 and 18, 10 points.
10 points?
What?
18%?
Oh, yeah.
18% and 10 points?
Yeah, we should bring it back. No,
I don't know about
Sounds
that.
pretty
Good to me.
Sounds like you were making a killing, man.
the cost of capital on our side was high. Plus, it was very different because I think at the time maybe we had like a $75 million fund, but that probably was one of the larger funds in the country at the time. Like institutional capital wasn't probably as prevalent, almost not really in the space. Kevin was one of the first people to say, what if we could take like the hard money concept and like put a bow and a ribbon around it and make it like it feels like you're going into like a great customer service place and it's like a real office with, it's like the Nordstroms of hard money lending. It didn't really. Now it's like everyone's got great service and looks cool and podcasts. Back then it was almost unheard of that you would have a real business out of it. But yeah, the terms were, maybe the best client was getting 3 and 13. Like that would have been like the pro pricing of the time.
Wow.
This was like mafioso money.
Yeah, probably close.
A couple.
But also, if you think of the clientele today, I think what '08 did was it brought all the Wall Street money in. Mm-hmm. It brought Wall Street in to buy single family.
Yeah.
Like 1 to 4 wasn't really a major asset class from an investment standpoint. And now it's also created a lot of opportunity for people like us and friends we know to be in that business owning that asset class. And that wasn't as prevalent. So like the customer base has totally changed.
Interesting. Was it more like mom and pop, or would you say more sophisticated? Like what has changed?
I would say in a lot of ways less sophisticated, much more, GC and not that GC in the truck isn't still today a customer type, but it was like mostly that.
Yeah.
Today you've got real estate businesses that have, CRMs and tech platforms, and they're buying data, and they're, on there with salespeople buying lots of properties.
Right.
They're real businesses now. It wasn't really like that, back then. It was Chuck in the truck or whatever they call, want to call that avatar.
Yeah. It wasn't, institutional, right? And then I think probably the other thing that changed is competition in the space, right? So now there's all these lenders.
Oh, yeah.
If you're charging, obviously you're out of a bit. If you're charging 10 points and 18%, your only customer might be have one brain cell. I don't know.
Yeah, probably not awesome credit. Probably not awesome credit.
So I could if I was going through '08 and I had $75 million out on the street and I had to rework those loans and I'm selling them pennies on the dollar, probably losing some of your investors' capital, right? Or how did you guys that must have been incredibly stressful for you and Kevin.
I would say for Kevin, a much different seat than me because it was his, I was just working there. I was like one of your loan officers.
Yeah.
Stressful for me because I was 26 getting married and I was out of a job, and you're watching your friends who are, becoming lawyers and doctors, and you're all of a sudden now you're questioning what did I do?
Right.
Am I starting over? Am I going back to school? I don't know what I'm going to do. So that was stressful. For Kevin, different story. You're looking at it this was my baby, this was my business. We've got an investor, probably friends and family money in here. But they ended up paying their senior capital provider, their bank, about 90 cents on the dollar, I think.
Really?
Don't quote me on that, but a lot for the time. Today, if you paid 90 cents on the dollar, you'd be bad. But back then,
everybody was
zero.
Yeah.
Just walking to the table, yeah.
If someone got back 90 cents on the dollar on the debt of that business, you were a hero.
Wow.
When the market's going down 40% and your lenders are still protected, that's phenomenal. What were the key learnings from that experience that you guys built a new business with legacy and with trying to build a business that's going to last forever, right? What are you doing now differently than you guys did back in 07, 08 that's going to allow you guys to go on perpetually?
And just to add to that, I think beyond that experience, you had an experience flipping houses. You did 40 flips, right, or something like that. That's a great experience because the investor side of things. And that's always something we say is we're investors ourselves. We get it. We're not just some, guy on Wall Street. So not only did you see the downturn, you understand now the ins and outs of lending and credit markets and that side of things. You also understand the investment side of things. So you're keyed up to blow it up now because you understand what it seems like all aspects of the business, right?
Still seems like we're learning every day and putting our hard hat on every day. But, yeah, we probably, hopefully use what we've learned and have worked on, and it's still 1,000 details to pull it off, which is why I think we show up every day, because it still makes it fun, because it's really hard.
Yeah, that's really true.
I mean, it's not like there's always a curveball. I mean, between COVID and rise, everyone predicted rates were going to go up, so they say. I don't buy it. But, of course, everyone said one day rates will go up. I don't think anyone predicted that they were going to all of a sudden, like, one day actually go up and go up that fast.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest banks are having trouble because of that, and they're supposed to be, like, the smartest people in the room.
Well, obviously not, because there was multiple hard money lenders that went out of business, like right at that point.
Right now is a crazy time, right? Yeah. So for every lender that's maybe hitting, like, having some success right now, there's probably 4 that are actually really struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I'm glad that you said that about how every day you're learning something new. There's a new detail, or you're putting on your hard hat every day. I went through a struggle, I feel like, over the last 2 months. I was just like, all of these problems, nonstop issues. Here's another fire. Here's another issue. And at a certain point, you could get kind of exhausted from it, right?
Well, you're probably pretty good at putting them out.
I feel like Eric's a little better, honestly. But
both good.
But I learned to. I just sat down one day in bed and I was like, I just solved like 6 problems, and because of those 6 problems, I just learned 6 new things. This is why I actually love this business, because you're constantly learning. You're communicating with architects, land use attorneys. I mean, you're doing a condo conversion, you got to talk to the surveyor, the title company, now you're the DCA. It's just like a beautiful, beautiful world of just collaboration, and that honestly is what makes real estate so fun. But dude, please, I want to know your learnings. Like, what did you like? How are you going to build something that's going to last forever now? From what you.
Great question. First of all, one learning that has nothing to do with how to build this to last is Kevin still today is a mentor of mine and has taught me this, that typically when you're making really good money, it's from the work you did like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like, if you really think about it, whatever is happening right now, like, you were working on something probably a year or 2 ago. It didn't, and at the time probably felt like it sucked and it was hard, and then the payoff comes, a couple years later, and then you probably ride that for a little, and then it comes again. So I think just, with experience, you just kind of like accept those like a little better, and you're like, all right, here's that next, ceiling we got to break through, and they get frustrated, and you're like, that's where you get your breakthrough, I think, is that frustration. So one learning is actually get excited about that frustration and that feeling like I'm not through that ceiling and this is really hard.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, so that means something's coming.
Nice.
I think, the first, build to last is, we have a kind of a funny, not really sophisticated way of surviving. So it's a 3-step approach. It's very complicated. First step is don't die. So, like, you can't go out of business. You got to stay, like, you have to be able to wake up the next day in business. You can't go out.
Can't die.
Can't die.
That's a Kevin thing.
That's
is it a Kevin thing?
This is Kevin saying, don't die.
Because he didn't die when everybody should have died, right? Like,
when everybody was
at that time, his company actually did. I mean, he didn't, but the company actually did, right? So, like, this time around, it was like, we can't actually die. So you got to, like, build it where you don't go out. So you've got to manage risk heavily. You got to think of ways. We knew having an on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet and a super diversified capital stack was really important. Like, think of a real estate deal if you were 90% levered and then filled the second 10% with, gap funding or basically another debt piece.
Yeah.
And then so now you're at 100%. And then all of a sudden that real estate's only worth, 70% of that. Right? But you're really high up the stack, and it's like money you owe, and it's expensive. And that's kind of how a finance company could get built. So can't build it that way. You got to be really diversified, and you got to, like, step one, we got an institutional partner, someone in the private equity world that really knows capital. And, like, rule one was the money's got to be super patient and long-term thinking. It can't be, short-term in nature, and it's gotta have a long view and to be around for a long time. So aligning ourselves with the right capital partners was critically important, and then having on balance sheet and off balance sheet like multiple strategies there is important, because if you sell a loan, it's off your books, right? Now we think of it like that loan's still made by us. We service every loan. So we're going to take care of it like it's our baby, and really internally don't really know the difference. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to diversify your capital so that, right, if one part of your arm gets cut off, like you're not done.
Right.
Like one day you might hear someone say like, we can't lend right now. So diversification there, very important.
So is it diversification through different products or different products that you offer your clients, and diversification on what you keep on your balance sheet and what you sell off? Like, how are you diversifying?
Your capital too, right? I mean,
I think it's both.
Yeah,
it's a combination of both, because products was important, because actually when rates started really going up, it's funny today. If I told you could have your DSCR loan at 6.5, I'd have to like keep you guys off me from hugging me, right? But if I told you that, like, I'm trying to think, like in some point last year when rates were coming up, you would have like punched me in the face, because you meant like 3 months prior it was 4, then it was 5, and then it was 6. When it became 6, everyone's like, oh my, it's 6, but then they got to 7 and 8, so now 6 seems
6 sounds good.
Really good.
So we closed, just on that point, we closed the loan. I don't remember when. It was Elm Street deal. It's like a 12 unit. And we did a DSCR loan, and I closed it at like 4.25. And I vividly remember David saying, 4.25, bro, like, that's terrible. How like, really? We're going to take this at 4.25? And I was like, let's just take it, because I don't know, the market.
Yeah, now he's 11.73.
I'm like ready to give Eric a kiss on the lips.
Not again. No, so like, I think to your point, like those expectations now, and then you came back to us with really cheap DSCR pricing, and we're like, this is bank pricing on DSCR loans. So, I mean, go ahead.
No, yeah.
But as they were going up, like during that time, people were really holding off on DSCR loans, clientele.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have a really powerful, flexible, and diverse bridge, right? We can go rehab, bridge, new construction. We kind of were able to lean a little bit that way. Like in an ideal case, it's 50-50.
Right.
You're doing half bridge, half, DSCR.
Right.
But I think being diversified in product type is also important, because there might be times where bridge is down and DSCR is up, and you want to lean one way or another.
Right.
We usually do it with the customer in mind. Like, so one of our core values is like, think of the client, everything else will follow. So the reason we keep servicing in-house, the reason we have diversified products, the reason we try to be competitive, it's like, what would the client want? What do they need for their business?
So just to kind of tell a quick story here, I got on the phone with Daniel. I think it was it Monday? It was Monday, right?
It was like a week ago, though.
It was a week, yeah, like last Monday. Last week. Santini from South Jersey, he's also a Collective Genius member, put us in touch. He's like, you got to connect with Daniel. He's really doing great things for my business, right? So I connect with him. And he's like, yeah, I'm a lender. I'm like, I'm a lender too.
First words out of his mouth, I'm sorry, dude. I know you're in CG and Santini, but I don't think we're gonna be able to. We're just gonna compete.
We're doing the same exact we're competing with you, bro. And he's like, and I'm like, yeah, but there's some cool products, like we're getting 1.0 DSCRs at this pricing. He's like, what if I could tell you, I could get you a 1.0 DSCR at this pricing? I said, what? You sure about that, dude? So I send them a 6-unit we're buying, and we have Wells Fargo at 7.55 interest only, 3.21 prepay, and it's a full doc loan. This is all A paper. I mean, they're going through tax returns. They're going to go through T36, like the trailing 36 months of the property's It's just a nightmare of documentation, just a ton of legwork. And you're getting a DSCR lender, which is a low doc, you could get done in a very, very quick, probably half the amount of time it would take to get bank financing. And he's beating them on pricing with with higher leverage. And you're like, this guy is just, he's going to change the game for us, right? And since then, we sent him Anthony's literally in another room right now is working on a refi to send you at this very moment in time. So, yeah, dude, what you guys created between the diversification of bridge debt and your DSCR stuff, really impressive. Really, really impressive.
And on that note, John deals with banks all the time. And you saw that quote and you're like, take that.
Take that.
I don't even think Dave finished telling me what the quote was, and I was like, take that. Don't even look at Wells Fargo anymore. It's not worth it. And just to go to your point too,
we gotta close it so you know we're real.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're gonna delete this podcast. We come back and it's like an 8.5 interest rate.
What the fuck? Don't air the podcast.
No, we'll just put a clip in, and his pricing isn't legit at all.
Otherwise known as the bait and switch.
Yeah. No, but to Eric's point, I'm dealing with banks obviously all day long, and when I know we were talking before, when I started my team in June 2021. Probably 80 to 90% of the deals that I did in the last 6 months of 2021 were DSCR, perm debt deals with debt funds, similar to Renovo, and closing in a third of the time, a quarter of the time, better or the same pricing, and it's just you're going through 10 times less headaches. There's not a world where it doesn't make sense. And that's why I was able to get done, such large amounts of volume. If I was trying to do that same number of deals with banks, I would have never been able to get them done in the speed, or as many as I did in that time frame.
Yeah, it's also a seasoning. There's so many requirements. Banks say you have to own this asset for at least 12 months to get.
And now that's changing too, right? With everything that's going on in the last few months, I think Valley Bank increased their seasoning requirement to 3 years.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Some of the terms you're seeing come out, I think, are basically, instead of saying we're not lending,
Yep.
Exactly.
They're just here, if you want the loan, this is what it is, and it's their way of just basically saying we don't actually want to make the loan
unless you want to,
I read this thing on LinkedIn this morning. Somebody posted, they said, how does a bank tell you they're not lending without telling you they're not lending?
Yeah.
And all the comments were exactly what we just said. You're pricing yourself 100, 200 bips above the market, or you're giving these terrible terms that nobody would take unless, they really need to.
I guess it sounds better than saying we're done lending. Right?
Yeah.
You gotta understand the customer, right? This is like being on that other side. So, if you walk an office of a legit real estate operation, you got to know they're spending money on their marketing. You got to know they're getting deals at a deep discount, right? So, a typical lender might say, you can't put a wholesale fee on there, right? If to your next buyer, well, it's do you know what they spent, what they went through to get that discount? Do you know that they went to the house? They didn't just pop on the MLS and compete with everyone on this, right? Then they bought it. They've now set up, they've systematized their construction so they can knock it out in 90 days. And now we're going to hold it against you for the fact that you did all this work so fast and you did such a good job. But, we can't actually give you the loan now because you got a discount, created this value.
You did everything
and you did
right.
it really well.
Yeah.
So if you actually, if you know why and how, if you know the why behind it, then you can, we got to take that, kind of on the boots on the ground, know what's going on there. And then you got to bring that to Wall Street and explain the same thing of well, this is how it works and this is what is happening and this is why the risk is okay. And it takes 12 meetings usually to get it to
it's
but they want to put the capital out. I think they just want to know that we're not doing something dumb here, right? With the capital. You don't want to be the dumb capital.
Right.
So, and then you got to have the data to back it up that shows turn times and performance so that you could say, no, this is not only how it works, but it's backed up by real data.
It's just, I guess it's a whole subsection of the market that, maybe Wall Street doesn't fully understand. And then I guess it's your job to come in and explain that.
Yeah. They're probably more used to seeing an invitation home is where they just, they go out and buy 10,000 houses, but we're really serving the non-institutional, player. So that could be anywhere from a couple of deals a year to, owning 1,000 units, right? But even owning 1,000 units is not truly institutional, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for whatever you guys are doing is working, because I've been in this space for, 6 years. You guys popped on like the radar for me, at least probably 2 years ago. And everybody has something bad to say about like a competitive bridge lender. Everyone's going to talk shit about them. Nobody says anything bad about Renovo. They're like, oh, no, they're good. Like, that's the feedback. And then all of a sudden, like,
come on, we can find someone.
No, I could agree with that. I really can.
I can find
100%.
Well, I'm sure you can find a couple. But whatever you guys are doing, I mean, it seems like over the last like year or 2 years, like you guys really popped on the radar. So like, did something shift, or you just got traction, or?
We spent from 2011 to August 2011 was our first loan that we made. It was like $88,000 in Skokie, Illinois.
Nice.
First client, still our client. Really proud to say that.
Oh, that's amazing.
But, we spent till like 2018 or 2017, 2018. So you're talking like 6-7 years only in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Like, we really wanted to keep the servicing business, mostly because we didn't want to do this great job for the client, outsource the service, and then get a call that whoever you pass me off to is terrible, and I can't get my draw, and I can't get my payoff, and I'm never using it again. So it took us a while to perfect like the foundation we wanted before going outside of Chicago.
Wow.
And then it took us like 3 years to figure out how to get out of Chicago. We failed like left and right. So we thought we would buy some companies, right? So, we would come to New Jersey, the Chicago guys, and, hey, well, why don't we buy you? This will be great. And then, our culture wouldn't mesh with that culture, and the type, it would be our fault because we wouldn't do the types of loans that they're used to doing, and vice versa. And then, so that didn't work. So then we tried to JV. So instead of buying, maybe we'll partner. We've got tech and capital and support team, right? So you can use all that to be better in your market. Right. And that didn't work. So finally we were just like, okay, we're really going to have to build this from the ground up, because we really wanted, our whole mission was to be local wherever we were. So if we were going to be in Texas, we did not want to be known as the Chicago guys lending in Texas.
Right.
I don't actually think they would welcome us very well there. Like in Boston, for sure. Like if you don't live there and you're not from there, it's very hard to do business there. So we really wanted to be local, and we finally realized if we could find the right team, find the right person, and really, then we could align culture, we could back that person and really work together to grow that market. It takes a lot longer, but that was kind of like the magic that came out of all that frustration. And our timing was perfect. We found their first person in Texas right when COVID hit. So they came on board, ready to go, trained up. This was like December of 2021. No, 2019. And then March came when we were literally going to open. So we had to make a call and say, hey, we're going to hold off for like a month. Let's just take it like a few weeks at a time. We're not doing this. But let's make sure the world's like still here, and because no one knew, right? Like they were talking like the world was going to. Yeah.
Nobody had any idea.
Yeah, I mean, the world basically shut down for a hot second, essentially.
I mean, we thought for a minute, say this with a grain of salt, because I know some people really did pass away, but like for a minute, you were like, I don't even know if everyone's going to be here in 2 months.
Right.
So we still had money to lend. We were never out of lending, but you were sort of like, are we supposed to lend? I'm not sure if we should lend.
Yep.
So we were like, let's just take it one step at a time. And then if it was only like a month or two later, we're like, all right, let's go. And then that created opportunity, because during COVID, as you probably know this, a lot of lenders stopped lending.
Yeah.
So that's when talent became like pretty readily like much more open to moving. And so once we saw Texas is working, that we really hit the gas. So that was 2020. Started hiring pretty aggressively during COVID. So we might have hired like 15 loan officers and a bunch of staff without ever meeting in person. It's kind of crazy to think about.
That's actually a really good point. Like during COVID, everybody's more readily, people are more way more willing to make a switch.
Well, if you were working at a lender that went out of business, or a lender that stopped lending, or a lender that didn't treat you right, you were happy in 2019, and post COVID, you might have been really pissed off.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to what's going on now, right?
It's literally the same thing. So that's why we're kind of thinking it's another.
Make a push. Good time to
If
make a
you're
push.
in there's probably a group of have and have-nots, meaning, and knock on wood, we feel like we're in the group of some haves. Like we've got a good product, we've got good products, we've got good capital, we've got a great team, so we can kind of maybe make a move here where, some companies are really having a hard time, but that makes talent again. There's like these little pockets of time you can make a move.
Right.
So
It's like taking advantage of opportunity.
yeah, it's like the real estate game too, right? Like there's little probably pockets of time where you could probably look back and go, man, that was the time where we could really hit the gas.
Yep.
I mean, you never stop growing,
Right.
but there's times where you can
Yeah.
take
Catapult
like
little bit.
a few steps
Yeah.
forward instead of one step forward.
When everyone's scared, that's when you jump in.
Yes. So that's the third step. So don't die.
Oh yeah, I was gonna come back to that.
Don't die, survive. So make sure like the dust is settled, right? So
Don't die, survive is one.
survive. Well, survive's number 2. So
Don't die and survive is number 2.
This guy's really
Are you kidding me?
survival mode's like we didn't die. We're gonna stay in business now, but we're not gonna make any moves. We're just gonna kind of
Like, how do we
This
coast?
guy's got capital
Let the-
preservation tattooed on his forehead.
let the dust settle a little. Like you usually have time to make your move. You don't. There's this feeling like, oh, we got to do it now. Like you usually have more time than you think.
Yeah.
Like if you look back at '08, you don't really have to do anything till like 2012, and you still didn't miss it.
Yeah.
Right? That was like 4 years of time. And then the last one is thrive. So like that's when you hit the gas.
Oh, don't die, survive, thrive.
You like that?
Yeah.
You guys can take it.
I do like that.
Yeah.
I-
Well, you can't do 3 if you don't do 1 and 2. So that's pretty good. That's
Yeah, and
a
if
good-
if you don't pass one, I mean,
Well,
there is.
I'll give
You can't
Kevin
do two
Werner
if you-
all
You're
the
done.
credit for the very sophisticated.
The 3-step, very complicated.
I mean, this could be like the
process.
best-selling book right next year.
That's actually a good book.
Yeah, don't die, survive, then thrive. Yeah.
We might have to rename our podcast.
Not again. Josh just had a panic attack. You guys are like very. I've noticed you have core values. You brought up a bunch of times. Clearly mission oriented. It seems like you have your goals very out there on the forefront. And then you talked about hiring virtually, right? Do you feel like that's why you've been so successful in bringing on key team members and being able to, kind of get them to buy into what you guys got going on?
Which part of it?
Just I think the goals, the mission, everything. I feel like it's very out in the forefront.
It's probably all comes down to culture at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And I think that only comes when it's real. And that I think so just it's from bottom to top, but I think in general, especially for Kevin and I and our leadership team, this is just who we are. From day one, Kevin always said like Renovo is supposed to be a vehicle for lots of people to live out whatever it is like their dream and their whole thing is, right? It's not about us. And we really want it to be a great place that like you go to work a lot. So it better be a place you really like to go.
yeah.
So we work really hard at that. We made one of our goals to be like on Inc. Best Places to Work, which we got this year.
Wow,
Oh, that's awesome.
congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So
That's
that,
huge.
but that was like more meaningful than profit numbers a lot of times because they're like that is real. That's actually harder.
Well, that's gonna lead to profit too, right?
Yeah.
It kind of is the leading indicator, right? Like your culture, those types of things. I think that's what makes it fun, and you work hard at it. So you got to build it in early. Which walking into this office, you could see that too.
I
See you guys care about that.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. We like to think it's fun here. I think.
Yeah. Sometimes Josh is a little stressed. He's oh, okay. We can cut that one out.
Outtake.
All right. So growth to $1 billion.
Yeah.
You guys are doing $2 billion. You guys started about 11, 12 years ago. You mentioned that you were hyper focused in Chicago, so I'm sure you weren't touching $1 billion when you were in Chi-Town, right? What did that growth look like over the last I don't know 10 years?
Well, first of all, like getting from 0 to probably 20 million was in a lot of ways like harder than getting from 20 million to 100 million.
Right.
So like once we figured out how to get to 20 million, that next evolution, and when we started the business, the first thing was like, what if we could get to 100 million, right? Because that would have been bigger than the last business, and the margins at the time, because no one else was in the space, it seemed like, were much wider than they are today. But net, I'll say that's a positive. I think for the client, the customer, the borrower, like more competitive pricing, more products, and has also allowed us. So it's better for the client. I think it's also allowed us to grow because we have more products now. We have a better cost. So if you think of like a bank client, probably wouldn't have borrowed from us if we only had bridge money at 2 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we have a DSCR product that you could lend at 1 and whatever the rate is of the time, you've now can compete with the bank. So I think the evolution of some of those things was super helpful, right? So customer base grows, products grow, capital grows. So there's more attraction to it. We had a huge, like once we had 100 million, we kind of fell into 200, just sort of happened a little bit. Sort of, what's the new book? Like 2X is easier than 10X?
I've seen that.
You've seen that one?
Yeah.
So we like 2X'd, but it sort of just happened. And it really took us a while to then like figure out how we're going to, like our next goal was going to be $1 billion, but it took us a couple years of, again, like hitting that ceiling and having some frustrating conversations. I remember phone calls of like me calling Kevin, like, what the F, like if we can't break through this, like, I don't even know if we should do this anymore.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
it gets frustrating because
it
you keep running into the wall and something's not working. But I think when you align the entire team and you put the goal down, I mean, more often than not, if you got the right team around the table, like you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
So I think once we unlock the getting out of Chicago and figuring out who are the right people to put in those seats, what assessments to give them and what's the right fit and who can we back, then that unlocked the $1 billion.
Can you kind of talk through that? Like, it's all about hiring the right people. When you're growing,
You gotta hire a lot of the wrong people
Yeah.
to figure that one out.
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah, no, definitely.
They're not even the wrong people. It's just not the right fit, right?
Right.
There's some great
Wrong
people.
Position.
Is it what kind of assessment? Like CG's huge on PI.
Here, yeah.
What do you guys use?
So we're actually like 6 months into CG. And CG is one of those things I'm like, I can't believe we haven't been in there longer, and also met so many amazing people. It feels like we've been in there for a decade.
Yeah.
Great group. So plug for CG. If you're serious about real estate, get in there.
Collective Genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check it out.
The question. What was the question again?
The assessments.
Yeah, how do you decide it's a good fit?
So I started learning recently about PI. It's not one that we've used, but I'm looking into it, and because it might help us. I'm learning. So
We use it, and it's useful for sure.
yeah. So I don't think you want too many. What we figured out is that especially on the sales side, so whether that's loan origination, maybe you're more of an outbound caller or whatever it might be, business development, we use a sales specific assessment. It's actually called OMG. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It'll literally tell you like if you're a hunter, farmer, can you close? Do you have a sales process? Like it's really good assessment. Some people use that as a go, no go. Won't even interview you. I've talked to a lot of people who've grown sales organizations. Won't even interview if you don't get a recommend on that assessment. We've actually had a few of our best who are like kind of on the
Borderline. Yeah.
So we use it as a gauge. I mean, if it's really off on a few specific measurements, we're definitely out. But if it's close or a recommend, we'll use that as like a third of our decision making.
Okay.
And then we use DISC. I don't know if you guys have used DISC before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty similar to PI.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of DISC profiles that can work in sales, but this is our business. You guys know it's a go
Yeah.
business, right? Like if you're not always on the phone, you're going out.
Yeah.
So, and it's definitely not a 9 to 5. And so we find like a high D, high I combo, like generally speaking, we have some people that it's worked without, but generally speaking, like most of our top originators are in that category. So we use those. I'm looking forward to diving into PI. I think you have to have something.
Yeah.
You can't just interview someone without an assessment.
No, I completely agree. We were having a lot of arguments internally when we were bringing on new acquisition managers. And as the guy who trains the new guys that come in, I was like, if they don't fit the PI, don't even interview them.
Yeah.
And Randy, who's in charge of recruitment, he's like, oh, but this resume is amazing. Are you sure? You know how hard it is to find the right talent pool? I'm like, just think about it. Everyone that we've had to let go over the last 5 years did not fit. Why would we even bother trying to bring someone on? It's like trying to fit a round peg in a.
The go no go mentality is like, so for the 1 or 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
Fine. Maybe they would work out, but then maybe you can't.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
So we've dialed into a hell yes, or it's a no.
Yep.
What's that? So that's 2/3, right? You would say the DISC, the OMG test,
Well, that's probably those assessments together are probably a third.
a third.
Yeah. Of like,
Of
and
the higher
it's not a
decision.
perfect science, but
Yeah.
you're like, all right, if I got some buckets,
Yeah.
so there's one bucket, the assessments. What are the other 2/3?
Yeah, please. 'Cause it's just selfishly for me.
Our gut, no. I mean, probably the interview, and I think you got to really think about like, what do you want to get out of the interview?
Yeah.
And for me, one of the most important things is past success. Like if you haven't had, and it doesn't have to be specific to this space necessarily, but if you haven't been successful and gotten awards or like gotten promoted, like in your past, if you haven't made money before,
Yep.
it's probably not like we're going to be the lucky ones.
Right.
Right.
That's a good point.
And then culture fit. So you could be great salesperson, you could be pass the assessments, but like if we're not aligned on our vision, your vision, and like the right fit, like will you fit within what we're trying to do? And it's like pick a sports team. Like if you're not gonna fit in our offense, you might be an amazing, player, but like the way you play doesn't fit in our model or our play.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just actually gonna fuck us up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
sense.
a good point.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, man.
I mean, I believe in what you guys are doing. It's clear that you guys are cooking with a full head of steam. And I noticed that you're always saying, as long as you got a good goal and the right team behind it, you're gonna hit the goal. You're clearly goal oriented. So what's next for you guys?
I mean, number specific, we want to be a $5 billion originator. When we get there, we'll see what's after that.
Yep.
We service our own loans, so we service about $2 billion of loans now. So along the way, we'd really like to be a $10 billion servicer of loans, and a rated servicer with a servicing business. So I don't know the horizon on that. We'll probably put like a 3-year window on that, like 5 and 25 has a nice ring. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter like how long it takes. So we just got to do it the right way. It's going to take more team building, more relationship building, going deeper in markets, and all the fun work.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I just one last question on your team. What's this company look like now? How many sales guys do you have? How many processors?
We are a team of about 120 people. I would say about quarter of that is service. So loan servicing is probably a quarter of that. So think everything from your construction draw to your payment, your escrows, like your payoff, all that. And then we have a sales team of about 20 people. And everything between that is
Operations.
either, ops,
Oh, they're crushing it.
management, admin.
It's about $100 million per LO.
We'd like to have 100. We would like to have 50 $100 million producers. But, of course, we will have guaranteed $1 billion producer on the team and a few at 500 million, and they'll build teams. That my most exciting challenge is helping people grow their origination business. That's the most fun for me. That's my thing.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask. Like, those are all comprised. How many people to a team? Like typically speaking, do you have one originator? Do you have like 2 or 3 processors and analysts, something like that?
Yeah, one originator, and they're supported by a support team, a pod of an analyst, a loan coordinator, production assistant. So, we really want that person out building relationships, hanging out with you, right?
Yep.
Going to get suits and
Let's go, baby.
yeah, it's really important that the team can deliver a quality of service that when the client's done with the experience, they are like, that was good. I'd like to come back.
Right. We good here?
Yeah. That was a lot of bombs dropped. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You stayed an extra day just to get on
Just
here.
to get up here.
Just to get to Newark, New Jersey.
Really appreciate it,
Yeah,
man.
Daniel, Renovo, where do people find you? Where should they reach out? They want to submit a loan.
You can come to Chicago, or what do you want me to give? Email.
Whatever you're comfortable giving.
I'll give my email. How's that? So drosen at renovofinancial.com. And I think if you email there, we can direct and make sure you get to whatever market you're in. Make sure you get to the right people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you having you on the podcast. You dropped some bombs. I think I learned a bunch about team building, and excited to see what's next for you guys.
Yeah, hopefully we do a lot of work together.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Thanks, Sam.